has joined me. I can't hear the producers. Okay, Dr. Swaran Singh, you know, China. Do you think China and Pakistan are exerting some kind of pressure on Bangladesh? Because this kind of statements, as Ambassador Riva Ganguly said, is absolutely extremely provocative as far as India is concerned. Now, do you think that the ouster of the friendly government of Sheikh Hasina, do you think it is China's gain, or do you India's loss, or do you think it is too simplistic an assessment?
Very clearly, if you look at China's game plan for India's neighborhood in South Asia, Sheikh Hasina stood as a very strong leader, which had a very good relationship with India, particularly with Prime Minister Modi. And her exit definitely created excitement in terms of exploring opportunities for Beijing, and of course also for Islamabad, that looks at all opportunities to see how they can browbeat India if they can, which is of course not possible. Now, scenario is very interesting. Sheikh Hasina Wajid has not resigned. She has not been impeached or has not vacated the post of prime minister under any constitutional provisions that we have. Second, Yunus is there as an interim chief advisor. Note, he's a chief advisor, which means he has to only have a simple duty of reviving the new government through proper elections following the people's mandate as soon as possible, and also stay apolitical. Now, he's neither apolitical nor he's trying to do elections as soon as possible, which means there are two things that are possible. One, either in the fervor of nationalism, or let me say in fervor of radicalization of Islamist forces, he's either propitiating them or has become a puppet of theirs, which means he is beginning to do things which, constitutionally he's not expected to do. And therefore, the whole radical transformation of relationship with Pakistan is something which is very, it's a very policy decision, and he's not having any mandate to take such transformative decisions as to how to change relationship with Pakistan that you mentioned had caused atrocities, and same is China. He is not supposed to make those offers and do those things. And we are hearing that in March this year, there were some visits. There's a talk of Lal Monorihat air base that the Chinese are showing some interest and so on. So it's a very strange situation where I think the only outcome should be elections as soon as possible. Let the new leader come and take decisions.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, both China and Pakistan will continue to explore opportunities to sort of make sure that they can have a deeper relationship, entrench themselves, taking advantage of uncertainty, weak politics of Yunus, and of course the radical forces that are there.
Right. The limited mandate thing, and I have the same question actually for Dr. Swaran Singh and Dr. Ivan Liderev actually. First, I'll go to Dr. Swaran Singh. Dr. Swaran Singh, you see, after Operation Sindoor, of the latest last 1 week of big developments between India and Pakistan, do you think, where, a lot of question mark has been raised on the Pakistani air defense system, the quality of Pakistani weapons vis-a-vis India's, because whereas the Pakistani side has not been able to demonstrate any proof, whereas the Indian side has given a lot of demonstrative proof actually about their reverses that they have inflicted on Pakistan side. Now, my question is, after this latest situation, do you think China will be more interested in consolidating its hold or consolidating its position in Bangladesh, giving Bangladesh a lot of loans, making it a debt economy, and consolidating its grip, and idea being to put additional pressure on India on the eastern flank? Do you think that is more likely now? And here is a willing leader, unelected, willing to accept what the Pakistanis are saying and what the Chinese are saying.
Between China and India, other than very often we have noticed forward deployments, eyeball to eyeball, soldiers facing each other for a long period of time, these two countries also showcase their power in terms of local geopolitics and how they influence local geopolitics. So in that sense, yes, both the way India stood up to China in Himalayas for last 4.5 years, and now particularly Operation Sindoor really leaves a very strong message to China, which apparently is a very strong competitor, not just in terms of territorial dispute, but also in terms of larger Eurasian geopolitics and how these two countries are seen as growing powers in the region. So India's standing up to China, followed by Operation Sindoor, has really delivered message to both Pakistan and China, and therefore there is a certain level of, shall we say, even desperation to make sure that they not only work together in tandem with each other, but also try to gain as much as possible their foothold in other regional countries in that sense. And Dhaka, which was a great friend of India, which was seen as a model of economic development for South Asia, which was seen as a state with political stability, is now suddenly so vulnerable that Chinese and both Pakistani leaders think they can go and do certain kind of arm twisting or influencing and building trenches for themselves in that country, which is happening without doubt. And what is interesting, I keep saying, is Dr. Yunus is not supposed to be there other than simply facilitating holding early elections. But apparently, he has his own ambitions and he's trying to ensure that he's trying to delay elections as much as possible, which is creating further confusion on the ground whether BNP is going to come back to power or sort of Islamic forces, Jamaat-e-Islami led forces are going to come to power. They have already banned Awami League. It creates much more chaos on the ground, and chaos suits both China and Pakistan because that makes a country called Bangladesh
Yeah.
much more vulnerable to them. And I think in that sense, India showcasing, other than power projections that we do on Republic Day or in terms of military exercises, use of armed forces leaves sort of impression for a long time to come as to how did
Right.
Indian Army, how did Indian Air Force and Navy conduct themselves when push came to shove. And that is leaving a very strong message to these two neighbors, and therefore they are, I'm saying in desperation, trying to come closer, work together, and seek as much influence as possible. And in that sense, in South Asia, Dhaka was the strongest pillar of India's support in that sense, with least influence of China or Pakistan till Sheikh Hasina was in command there. And now that seems to be creating an unusual attraction for both China and Pakistan, who are trying to engage and assuage Mohammed Yunus as much as possible.
Right.
And building partnership in them in that sense is an effort on Dr. Mohammed Yunus's part to seek legitimacy outside, not just inside the Bangladesh, but seek legitimacy outside in other regional
Okay.
players endorsing and welcoming him and so on.
Yeah.
But his mandate is not to do that, I keep saying.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let me bring that, we should start, resume the direct flights. And the Consul General in Kolkata gave an interview recently. We said that there should be more visas, visa restrictions should be lifted, so on and so forth. We should improve ties, so on and so forth. Now, in this kind of a situation when there is a trade war going, when most of the companies are saying that they are going to shift to India, that is a different story. Do you think Pakistan will be used as a proxy by China? Is that also likely now?
China has always seen Pakistan as a very unusual partner, which is an Islamic state, which is ruled by military more often, but still a very close partner of a communist power, which is an atheist state in that sense. So it's a very unusual combination that they have had. And only good explanation for their sustained, very close relationship, deeper than oceans and higher than mountains, as Pakistanis often like to celebrate it, is their obsession with India. So that has always been the reason why these two unusual bedfellows have been able to survive together for such long period of time. And now in a situation where they have seen India's prowess, which worries them, I'm sure. And that brings them further closer. And in that context, Bangladesh becomes an opportunity where they want to really revive that relationship with some Islamic forces in Bangladesh, which will see Pakistan as is a sort of blood brother for them, and China has advantage of deep pockets and wants to invest and provide military supplies. In that sense, it's a cocktail of very unusual circumstances, But we are only hoping that once elections take place and a more stable government comes to power in Bangladesh, they will soon begin to decipher that how their survival, their success, their development depends on a positive developmental relationship with India. And India is not only interested in sort of building a strategic commercial partnership, it's a very strong people to people partnership, partnership of history, of culture, and so on. And in that sense, any elected leader in Bangladesh that has to answer to the electorate will know that the focus has to be on development. And development cannot come unless a very strong partnership with India is revived. And I think that is why I keep saying that Dr. Yunus must, as soon as possible, hold elections, bring an elected government with a mandate to take decisions and step aside. But there is an obvious temptation that he wants to prolong his stay as chief advisor to Bangladesh. And apparently, there are no strong reasons now that he could potentially be a candidate to either contest election or get elected, because there are strong other contenders in the field. So, in that sense, his vulnerabilities, his personal weaknesses to stay in power are giving opportunities to Pakistan and China, who always wanted to make sure they come together and build, even stronger entrenchments in other neighboring countries of India. And to me, this is definitely impacting how India will organize its security, and particularly the kind of triggers that have come to guide China-Pakistan relationship in Bangladesh post Operation Sindoor. But as soon as elections take place in Bangladesh, the leader will have to look long term. Will leaders have to look at development, and I'm sure some kind of course correction is bound to take place as soon as elections are held and a new leader comes in Bangladesh.
Right. Bangladesh, and that is the reason why an interim unelected leader like Muhammad Yunus is able to hobnob with the Pakistanis without bothering about the reaction on the ground. We will elaborate on that a little later. Let me once again go to Dr. Swaran Singh. I have a question for both General as well as Ivan, but I'll come to that slightly later. Dr. Swaran Singh, now I want to know, in this kind of a situation, I was asking the ambassador this question: what should be India's response? Are we going to, brazen it out? Are we going to just hang around, do nothing, wait for this interim government to end, elections to be held? But do you think by that time it is going to be too late?
First of all, I think it's not India's way to brazen it out or completely be mute spectator. If you notice, or since August last year, there have been several formal, direct conversations at various levels, including with Muhammad Yunus. And I think the effort that India has made, and I think India will make, is to ensure that India is able to nudge Dr. Yunus to early elections, and also make sure that it can communicate to him that no policy decisions, particularly no fundamental changes in equations and policies, can be made until a elected government is brought back to Dhaka. Otherwise, minimalist approach of engaging him and his team of advisors will continue. But this has to be conveyed that India would prefer that serious decision making and serious initiatives can happen between India and Bangladesh only once a formally elected government with a popular mandate is brought back to power, and also keep making him, kind of aware of what these temptations or sort of euphoria-led kind of reactions in building partnerships with Pakistan, for example, visa on arrival, direct shipping, direct airlines, trade, and so on.
Yeah.
That these short-term initiatives completely undermine their own history, and in that sense are not going to be finally acceptable to the popular sort of mandate once elections are held. So I think a very subtle way of indirectly and constantly nudging Dr. Yunus to stay on course and do what is expected of him as interim chief advisor, to make sure the stability is brought back, elections are held, and then let policy decisions be made by the elected government. But of course, meanwhile, India will have to stay very alert to what is happening. For example, you mentioned Monirhat air base becoming a kind of a area of conversation. Though it's not a security concern. You see, India's Trishakti corps are right now in Siliguri.
Yes.
Hashimara has Rafale squadron. So it's not a security threat, even if Chinese find a foothold in Lal Monirhat area. It will be foolhardy of them to invest in that area, but it can be an irritant. It can be an intelligence gathering kind of an effort. So that kind of nuisance can happen during this period of Mohammad Yunus trying to find legitimacy in external partnership with China and Pakistan. But I'm very confident these are not sustainable, because once the popular mandate comes, focus shifts to long-term developmental kind of policies. India will be seen as a natural partner. India has been a very strong partner for last 25 years, 15 years of continuous Sheikh Hasina's leadership.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, I think the shorter this nuisance continues, the better for everybody.
Right.
But I think it's a personal ambitions of Dr. Yunus to stay in power, which is kind of propitiating the groundswell of radical Chhatra Shivir-led kind of rhetoric, which is guiding the narratives at this stage. Hopefully, they will sort of go back to stability and sanity, and I think that should happen earlier than later.
I'll go for a quick 30-second.